Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel Tech for Today. In the last video, I had discussed about some of the basic concepts which an admin should be aware of. Along with that, the license roles and permissions required to access the admin console. So in this video, I will discuss about the network prerequisites which are required to access the MDCA admin portal. Along with that, I'll also try to cover some of the admin settings which an admin can do from the MDCA admin console. So the very first thing is to know your data center. It is important to know your data center because some of the requirements depend on which data center your tenant is residing. I'll show you the exact settings. For that I am switching to my browser. So if you remember in my last video, I had mentioned the URL to access the admin portal. So portal.cloudappsecurity.com is the URL where you can log in with your admin account and password. And the moment when you log in, this actually redirects to your tenant account, and this will be your dashboard of your MDCA console. So since this is my trial tenant, I don't have much data or alerts to show here. So to know your data center, the very first thing what you have to do is that in the extreme right side of your console, there is a question mark button or a help button. You can click on that and click on about option, where you will find the data center, the region and the portal URL. So the data center and the region where where your tenant is sitting. This is important, especially when you are opening some of the IP addresses, and because the IP addresses will be changing depending on the data center your tenant is sitting. Now switching back to my deck, once you know your data center, uh, so there are certain URLs which has to be opened outbound towards port 443, and I have listed the URLs which has to be opened. So if you see here, there are some wildcard URL also. So one thing I wanted to add here is, so instead of accessing or instead of allowing this wildcard, what you can do, you can choose to open only your specific tenant URL which you will get from the previous settings. That is, from the same setting where you're seeing a data center, there is a portal URL also. So instead of opening towards the wildcard URL, you can open towards your specific tenant URL, towards outbound towards port 443. So along with that, for the US government GCC high customer, there is a different URL which has to be opened. So same here. So instead of opening the wildcard, you can choose to open specific to your tenant URL. And apart from this, additionally there are multiple IP addresses which has to be added depending on which data center you use. So since this IP addresses get changes, I have not added all IP addresses here, but I will add this URL in the description box. I will switch to the browser to show you the IP addresses. So if you see here, there are different data center, and based on the data center where your tenant is sitting, the IP addresses gets changed, and you can open only these specific IP addresses, and just make sure that only these are part of your firewalls allow list. We'll see some of the admin settings from the MDCA console. So if you see on the extreme right side, there is a settings cog. If you click on that, there are multiple settings which are available. So once you click on the settings clock, there are a lot of settings or customization which an admin can do. There are organization details, mail settings, export settings, automatic sign out, activity privacy. There are a lot more. So the very first step as an admin you have to do is to connect your apps. So where you can do is you can go to the settings and you can go to the app connectors, and it will redirect to this page where you have to connect to the application which you wanted to have visibility over. So if you click on connect an app, there will be multiple apps by default available in your MDC admin console. You can click on the app and you can just add the instance specific for your tenant. For example, if I am clicking on Salesforce, you can just give your instance. This is just a sample instance, and you can just connect on Salesforce. So there will be certain steps which you have to follow. You can click on the link and you can follow the steps for your to connect the Salesforce tenant. Now the apps has to be connected is because once you connect the application with your MDCA, you will have a visibility and control. You can control the application with the policies from MDCA. So when MDCA connects the application for the first time, it initially requests for the user access or user list. It will check how many users are using this application. That will be the very first thing it will be done when we are connecting an application. So once it gets the user list, it gets the user list by initiating a scanning, and once it gets a user list, it requests for the activities and all the files which are there in the application. So MDCA periodically scans user groups and activities and file, and this initial connection, it actually it may take time depending on the size of the tenant, the number of user, and the size of the files which the app is having and which has to be scanned. So all these things are there, and based on this the scanning will take time. Moving on, we'll see the different other settings from the admin console. So if you go to the settings, these are some settings which admin can customize. First one is environment name, where you can give your organization details, your organization display name, and if you have multiple environment, you can also give just to segregate the different environment name which your organization is holding. And also you have organization logo, and whenever somebody gets an email, it can be an email for the admin or it can be an email for the user. So if you want it to go with your logo, so you can add this. You can upload an PNG file, and this image will be displayed in the email whichever it's triggering from the MDCA console. So next one is manage domain. This is one of the very important settings. So manage domain is to identify your internal users. Now MDCA uses the manage domain to determine which users are internal and which users are external, and based on this MDCA will decide the file should be shared or not shared. So this information is used in reports and alerts. So for example, if you don't add any domain in the list, okay, so if you have a domain and you have not added to be part of the managed domain, what happens is that any user who belong to the specific domain is considered as an external, and those users are not scanned for any specific activity which they perform. So if you have 10 domains, make sure that you add all the 10 domains here, because if you have not added the domains, what happened? The user who is not part of the domain will be considered as an external, and whatever activities they are performing, everything will be considered as an external user and it will not be monitored. Next thing is mail setting. So email sender identity. So there is a default setting from where the email will be triggered, and any email notifications or alerts which are sent by Defender for Cloud Apps, the alerts will be sent to the users and also to the admins. So the default email will come from no reply at the rate cloudappsecurity.com, and this is displaying Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. And instead of sending from the default setting, if you wanted to send to the custom setting, that is also possible. But this setting is available only for the user. For admin, will still they'll receive emails from this email address, which is the default setting set by the MDCA. Now, custom settings, you can give a different display name and different email address and different reply to email address. This can be done. And one thing which I wanted to add here is, so since this custom settings is managed by a third party vendor or service, it is managed by MailChimp. So you have to accept the terms of services before you add the custom email address. And you can also send a test email to check how the email is coming or how the emails will be triggering for the user. If you see here, if I if you see here, if I initiate a test email, it will be sent to the admin account which I have logged in. And the email, this is the one of the sample email which I had initiated, and you will have your logo, everything here. And this is how the user email will be triggered for the user. It can be any admin emails or it can be any user emails. Now switching back to my admin. Next is the export setting. If you wanted to take the backup of your settings, your rules, or your it can be your user groups or IP address range. If you want to take a backup of all the settings you have done, you can click on the export setting. It will create an JSON file of all your portal setting, including your policy rules, your user groups, IP address ranges, everything it will have, so that you can use it for your further future reference. Next is automatic sign out. So this specify the amount of time a session can remain inactive before the session is automatically signed out. So if you see here, there are some set of uh, time which is their default, which you can set. If you have selecting after 30 minutes, what it means is that any user who is inactive in the session for 30 minutes, automatically those admin will be signed out from this admin console. So based on the available time, you can set the inactive session for the user. And one thing which I wanted to add is Defender for Cloud Apps. It also uses the Azure Active Directory to determine the user's directory level inactivity timeout setting. Okay, so if a user is configured in Azure Active Directory to never sign out when inactive, okay, what happens is that the same setting will apply in Defender for Cloud Apps as well. So if there is some setting set for the user in the Azure AD, the same setting will be applied in the as the inactive time for the MDCA and admin console also. And next is activity privacy. Activity privacy, it controls which activities are private and which admins can reveal them. So first one is scope, deployment and privacy. So with scoping, what you can do, you can select certain user group to be monitored for apps or exclude from monitor. So one of the use case of scoping is that, so for example, in your tenant, if you have 5,000 users, but you have the MDCA license only for 1,000 users. So you wanted to make sure that MDCA policies are not applied to all users. Instead of that, it is applied to only the 1,000 users. So what you can do, so instead of adding to all, you can add a rule and you can give a rule name. For example, I'll give like sales department, and I can select the user or the group of users, and I can say what I can say, this should be either applied to all apps. I'll have also option to specify. I also have option to select the specific app. For example, I'm saying that okay, Microsoft Azure AD or Office 365, these should be the apps which should be monitored, or they should be monitored for the set of users. And also you have an option to add a specific instance. Now, if you wanted the user group here, the very first thing what you have to do is you have to import the user groups. That is the first step, which you can do from the settings user group. And if you see here, there is an option import user group. Click on that and select from where you wanted to import the group, and you can select. So since I don't have any groups in Azure, that's why it's not showing me here. Otherwise it will list down all the groups which is part of Azure AD, or if you're selecting Office 65 also, it will show you. So if you see here, there are some Office 365 group which I'm having. So I can select which group I wanted to add and click on import. Even you have an option to notify when the import is completed. Import generally takes time depending on the number of users which are part of the group. So once you have the group imported here, and the same group will be visible here when you go to the scope deployment. Since it is still happening, that's why it's not showing here. Once the import is completed, that group will be listed here. Now, another use case of is if there are some set of users from certain country, if you don't want if you don't want admin to monitor them, it can be based because of some compliance regulations. Like some country, maybe Germany, if you're saying that any users who are part of the Germany shouldn't be monitored, in that case what you can do, you can exclude those set of users from here. Same like including, you can select the group, and you can say which app has to be monitored, not monitored. Next is activity privacy. So this controls the privacy of user activity. Okay, so if you have any set of user whose privacy should be safeguarded by hiding their activity, but at the same time those users should be monitored. So for example, if there are some 10 executive users in your organization whose activity shouldn't be read by all the admins. So in that case, instead of having all the admins permission to view those users logs, you can say that only authorized admins will have option to view their private activity. So here also you can create a group of the 10 members, and you can make sure that you import the group first. You can add the group here, so that only those so that those the users who are part of the group, their activities are not monitored. They are kept hidden, and these private activities, they are not forwarded to M365 Defender Advanced Hunting, and also they are not forwarded for the SIM integration. You have added the group or the user group whose activity should be hidden, and at the same time you have to make sure that you are adding the admin admin also. So you are saying that only this admin should have access to manage the or manage or view the activities done by these users. So for that, you can click on manage view permission and just click on add. This will redirect to the manage admin access page. You can click on add users and give the uh, email addresses or UPN of that admin, and click on add permission. So what it does is that you can add some set of admins to make sure that they are only part of the admin or activity privacy permissions. Only they have permission to view the activities of those users for whose activity has to be hidden. If you see here, there are still a lot more settings which is there, which has to be covered, which I will continue in our next video. To summarize, what we have seen today is we have discussed about the network prerequisites which are required for the portal access. We also discussed some of the admin settings an admin can customize from the console. We will continue the remaining admin settings in the part 2 session. Thank you for watching the video. Till I come with the next video. Bye bye.